It's Tuesday afternoon at 4 p.m. in Switzerland. It's Space Café WebTalk time. Our Space Café WebTalk, 33 minutes with Martin Coleman, will begin soon. Thanks for joining us today and for our talk about Space Debris, the 2020 vision. I'm Torsten Kriening, your host, today publisher of SpaceWatch.Global, and we are a Switzerland-based online platform for information in and about space, new space activities in a geopolitical context. I know many of you are already familiar with our website, our bi-weekly and daily newsletters, and our Space Café podcast. Our latest episode, number 17, was released last week on all major platforms, featuring Kelly Gerardi, an analog astronaut, wife, mother, influencer, author, and somebody you really should listen to. Trust me, it's a very inspiring episode of the podcast. We also keep our fan shop online open for you, despite all the lockdowns, where you can support us actively and become a space watcher. The edition one has cool mugs, awesome t-shirts, brand new reflecting jackets and backpacks for you, for your friends and the ones you love. Your support is really needed to keep our work alive for you. If you missed any of the previous web talks, we have an archive available on our website in the event section and on YouTube. We host our Space Café web talks on a weekly base, and this is already our 38th edition today and the last one for this year. But I hope you mark the Tuesdays in your calendars already. I feel very honored today to have one very inspiring space ambassador in my show. And I just want to call it this way because it sounds so cool. Someone I really admire for his work and his very open, very candid conversation in our sector. And with that, a very warm welcome, Martin Coleman, in my Space Café.
Thank you, Torsten.
You're welcome. Just to give some short introduction about you. Martin has been a central part of the Satcoms Innovation Group since 2006. Since 2011, he has been active in spearheading several significant initiatives, leading the advance in new tools to resolve all types of wizard interferences, and introducing Carrier ID. I think Carrier ID is connected to your name like nothing else. Martin regularly addresses the industry on the management of spectrum and space, including radio frequency interference and space debris. And that's what we are talking about. Working with the ITU and major broadcasters in dealing with harmful interference is another facet of his work. And Martin's company, Coleman Engineering, is heavily involved in introducing innovative technologies, processes, and automation techniques to manage spectrum and ground infrastructure, and working with agencies such as NOAA to improve Satcom operations. Once more, welcome Martin to my show. Let's get it kicked off. We will be talking about a topic that we covered several times this year already in various formats, about space debris. Like other areas, this is seen to be very hyped by some, and others request an immediate action on it. We try to talk especially about this year, about 2020. What happened on the space debris side within this year, and where are we heading? Today we try to divide it into 5 major elements, such as monitoring, calculation and assumption, data sharing, global modeling, and last but not least, the entire topic of mega constellations. Let's start with monitoring. Martin, where do we stand? Don't we have all the sensors, all the data that we need already? I mean, we all can see satellites with our own eyes when we look up. So what else is needed?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was only the other night I was watching a batch of Starlinks go right over my cottage here in Dorset. Well, the categories you set, I mean, at the beginning, if we see it? I mean, is the monitoring there? Well, yes. But how much do we monitor? I mean, they say at the moment we're looking at 23,000 reasonable sized objects that are being fully tracked and monitored all the time. The problem is that there is an estimation of some 900,000 objects that are over 1 centimetre cube, which are considered dangerous. So therefore, yes, monitoring, I think we're in a good shape. I think we have the opticals, the laser, we've got RF, we've got radar, we've got all sorts of methods, and they work. I think that's the best bit. The problem is, how on earth do we track more and, get that raw data down? How do we do that? I don't think anybody's quite got it yet. If we are only looking at 23,000 objects when the goal is 900,000 objects, then we sort of starting to have a bigger monitoring problem than most people out there, especially in the public arena, would even consider. I think most would think 23,000 objects was too many, but 900,000 is a lot. And don't talk about the small stuff, which is just as dangerous, but that's millions. I mean, we don't even know what that number is. It's a big number. So, but monitoring the dangerous things, yes, we have the technology. I think there's the investment and we can do it. But can we do it enough? There's the one.
But monitoring sensors is just one side of the multifaceted coin here. And you said it, we might see something, but how accurate is that what we measure today?
Oh boy. Well, I thought.
Sorry for coming up with the hard questions.
Yeah, I knew you would. But well, I know we sort of talked about this, and we've had a few chats recently about this, and from our illustrious colleagues around the world about this. And it surprised me that we have great data. We seem to be able to see a lot, but is anybody looking properly? And what's worse, it was only recently, only literally a month ago, that I suddenly realised we don't really know the actual position of an object. Just one object. Let's not worry about 23. Let's forget it. Just pick any one object, and I know people that will show you 4 different places that object exists. So we can monitor it. So we have data, but you'd think the data would be the same. In other words, where it was should be the same place. It should be agreeable. It should be, everything should match. But of course, the calculations, even from the same data sets, can vary by several kilometers in actual position. Well, several kilometers is just not good enough. And it seems to me that the problem, there seems to be a set of assumptions. And depending what set of assumptions you make, there's the fly in the ointment. What on earth are we doing with a set of assumptions that can be different? I mean, most things are a standard. I thought we knew, when you got an object, you knew where it was. Certainly the satellite side of life. I'm talking about things that are in orbit and are being used today. The ones that we are supposed to know about all the time. Yet, I've seen it with my own eyes that those can be in any one of, say, at least 4 different places. So think about it. If we have 23,000 objects that we thought we knew where they were and they're not, and it's 4 times that, let's just say there's, times 4 errors in where we think they are, this does not. We're back to the monitoring. We can't do it all. And now we can't seem to make the calculations work. And it's staggering. Staggering.
But isn't it a question just out of real life? I mean, whose truths do we believe in? I mean, if we have these various data sets, and I'm quite sure all these data sets are proven by the physics and by the sensors on whatever, and then you calculate them and you combine them, and then And I mean, your reference to astrograph of our common friend Moriba Jah, suddenly they appear in 4 different places, more or less in the same cloud, but that's it. I mean, why?
Yeah, well, I don't know the answer, Torsten. I mean, that's the point. I'm not the cleverest bunny here at all. I mean, thank God we've got people like Mariba and the Astroscales, all sorts of people that I talk to about this. And I am so pleased. We do have the expertise. We do have the clever people. Let's not underestimate that. I think the problem is, are we inclined to work in isolation? In other words, is that the real problem? That everybody over the other side of the Atlantic thinks they know what they're doing, and everybody here in Europe thinks they know what they're doing, and probably people in Asia think they know what they're doing. But does everybody really put them all together? And to me, I'm beginning to sense that doesn't quite happen. And of course, you know where we're going, don't you? We're going towards the subject. And I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh, but data sharing. I mean,
no, absolutely, and I would like to talk about it in a second. So, I mean, you said okay, the other side of the Atlantic sees also this world, obviously in a different way, and even so, UK is part of the Five Eyes. So just to mention that for a second here. So, but why don't we collaborate? I mean, this is a global challenge. There's not something what the Dorset government or the Berlin government can solve, because it's something what has an impact on all of us. So it's a global challenge, I think, without any doubt. So why don't we share data? Or
well, I mean, I'm going to go back a bit. I mean, a little bit of fact here for those. When you think about it, that we're trying to, if we knew what we were doing, we would then be able to issue warnings that were accurate and more precise, and therefore people could react and do something about a possible collision, let's say, and be able to do it. But right now, we're trying to get it down to within 1 kilometre. The problem is, going back to those errors, now we're sort of, the data's telling us that we've got some 600 possible events per day of around the kilometre mark of collision. You know, that's what is it? Every 2 minutes, 14 seconds, I think, something like that. That is staggering that we don't have more collisions. So there's something about all this assumptions and data. There's something missing, but going straight into the data sharing, I think people do work together, but it's too loose. I think we've got great people. I mean, just thinking in Europe, DLR, for instance, we've got a great company doing a lot of work in this area. I only mention them because it's just one, and there's a lot. And then you think of they C-Spot now in the US, but I mean, the US put a lot of money and effort and time into trying to figure this out. You've got to give them credit where credit's due. You know, there's good people working at this, and I am sure they do cooperate. A bit like when we're doing interference, the satellite operators under the hood cooperate to fix things that we never want to see. They just get on with it. So I do believe it happens, but it doesn't feel like we're as organised as we should. It's like the plastic problem. You and I have used that many times. The plastic problem on Earth, it's the same problem in space with debris. We have to get a grip of it now, not tomorrow. It should have been yesterday. Because if we want to use space, then we need to clean things up. And if we don't. So data sharing, I've always thought, is the must-have. But it does seem nearly impossible. It's sort of shared. Some entities, agencies can let you have some data, but it's still not easy. You don't want the data going everywhere. You want it to go into proper entities that deal with this. But also, should it not go to our top universities around the world so that a lot more people can study this stuff?
I was just about to say, why do we keep this data, or no, why don't we handle this data as, let's call it a global commons as well, accessible to everyone? Because do you know who is clever enough to make the magic out of that? So we don't know. I mean, we have these, you said, the big corporates, the agencies, and so on. They do a great job, but obviously not enough. Because, I mean, taking all what you said, blending that together, putting it again, we are lacking global unified model of space, in my opinion. I mean, for me, it sounds a bit like the old, I mean, you and I are old enough to know the battle about the tape, so VHS versus beta. So, I mean, okay, now we have it online anyhow, so don't matter. So, but don't we learn as humans from that? And we have this severe thing now going on, and I think one element is to educate the normal citizen that are not space geeks like we are, that something goes on and our politicians have to take action out of that, or at least release budgets or whatever action has to be taken. But again, let's talk about this global model of space. What is your point on that?
Well, if you think about the data stuff, you know, to lead into that global model, because it's always amused me that, because politicians are the layperson in this. They are the ones that we need to explain this problem succinctly and accurately. Otherwise, even a politician can't make their mind up. And that is a worry. But let's go away from politics. We've already got what I think is, has been quoted a few times, the uncertainty of uncertainties. There you go. My God, what does that mean? I don't know. All I know is we don't know nothing. We don't know the answer. And it's all down to probability and statistical probability, and it's an uncertainty. So we even are uncertain of the very things we don't know about. It's amazing. Also, who's analysing this? Who just takes a look at the data just to take that? So we call it a high-level view of what is it? Is it the beginning of life problem? Is it a midlife? Does it peak at midlife of satellite orbits, or is it end of life type of orbits? And where did all this 25-year business come from when I've seen data saying that within the first year there's trouble, and mostly before the 25 years there's a very good chance of collision anyway? So where does that fit? So here's an interesting thought for people. Here's what I started. You're saying about global model. The way I looked at it was we were inclined to look at the mega constellation, which is, I know, at the bottom of our list, but it all gets wrapped up here. We can't help it.
It's the next one, anyhow. So.
It is the next one, so what the heck. But my thought was, and it's been there and it's still there in my head, is the mega constellation. So you put all these satellites up. Who said they could go where they could go, and how many we can fit in that near space, in that up to 1,000 kilometres or so above us? It's not far, remember. So there's not a lot of space around the Earth at that level. It looks like a lot of space, but it isn't. It's quite finite. So it's interesting when you go back. We don't have a model since the very first satellite was put into space. In other words, wouldn't you think by now that someone like the ITU would have this magic model that would have recorded everything we've got up there today, and that when you came along with your new constellation, whether it's a MEO or 1GEO or whatever it is, that went into the model, and of course it both looked at the physical side of its orbits and the spectrum side of what it does. And that model would tell you instantly whether your proposal will work or not. But we don't even have a model of today. We do not have a model of now. So when you stick another 10,000 satellites up there, what does that mean? What happens? I think the answer is, and it's been quoted a few times and recently, is I think the word is scary. In other words, we are going uncertain. We're uncertain of the uncertainties, but let's put another 10,000 up in low Earth orbit, for instance.
I mean, I noted here are the statements. So are they a threat or they come in peace?
They come in peace. It's no problem.
How do you balance the global coverage, what we are promised, everyone have whatever our high bandwidth are available wherever we are, versus this safety in space? How do you balance that, especially when commercial elements coming into the equation?
Well, you know me well enough, Torsten. I love technology. I'm still probably a mental age of 5 years old. I love everything from Lego. I was a Meccano man, if anybody's heard of that. I love technology, and I love all this. I love the LEO Mega console. I think it's fantastic. I think it's got so much potential, and I'm thinking in 5G cell structure, all sorts of stuff. I'm excited about it. I'm excited about MEO. I'm excited about, for instance, SES's mPower project at the moment. I'm excited about putting small sats in GEO rather than one large satellite in GEO. There's tons of things I am excited about and I want to happen. But common sense tells me, being an ordinary, I'm not even going to be an engineer here. I'm just a technician, a guy doing the wiring. There you go. That's how I started life in a telephone exchange. A guy doing the wiring. I had to learn my trade, and there were rules about what went where, how the pairs were ordered, how you laid cables. Well, shouldn't we be preparing space in the same way? Shouldn't we have that? Where did the common sense go? Where did the rules go? We have this 25-year rule. Fantastic. So when we put Telstar up, it should be gone by now, shouldn't it? Have a look, ladies and gentlemen. Telstar, 1962, is still nicely in orbit around the planet. It's still there. Now, that's slightly more than 25 years old. Just a bit. The point is, we've got rules. We don't seem to be either making newer rules to allow for all this to happen, and we have nothing to back it up. We're back to the model. We're back to the data. We're back to the assumptions, and guess what? We're back to the monitoring. So we went down a list, Torsten, and we shot all the way back through the list to say we haven't fixed any one of these down the list. So Absolutely. How can you just simply say that another 10,000 satellites in LEO will be fine? How can you, hand on heart, without common sense? Now, maybe it's my brain cells. Being an old chap, maybe the brain cells are going, and perhaps I can't figure it out. But I'm hearing this from other people. So what is going? I'm going to put a question back. Torsten, what does Torsten think about that?
That's unfair. I'm the moderator. However, I mean, I'm scared as well, and I mean, we do what we can do as SpaceWatch.Global, and keeping this alive, keeping that to any audience we find, to educate them, to talk about. I mean, we have a number of global challenges right now. I mean, as we speak, I mean, heading tomorrow into lockdown here in Germany. Yeah, that's one of them. But I mean, and that goes on and on. I mean, it's water, it's air pollution, it's I mean, it's endless. And one of them is space. I mean, we all love space. I think anybody loves it, but so we can try to educate people on that. Not us potentially not the guys or the people here in the room today, our guests. I mean, you all are here because you know space, you know it. But I think what each and every one of us can do is talk to your peers, to talk to your family, include them into, or invite them to include them into the discussion. I would like to have one final question before we then pick up a few of these wonderful questions we got from you here. What is the top priority? Picking any of the super important thing, where you say what we should do first?
I think fundamentally, from what I can see, if we're going to can only tackle a few things at the beginning, then we have to go and get the large rocket bodies that are in what I hear the term is in cross orbit to everything else. In other words, that's the most dangerous type of debris, the debris that crosses through the majority of orbits that are all effectively going the same way in the same direction. So I think the concentration, simple as that, go for the big stuff. Get those big rocket bodies out of the way. They shouldn't be there by now, but they need bringing down.
Yeah, like a tumbling bus on a German highway. So what can go wrong? Yeah.
Well, of course, if you don't know if you can bring it down, what do you got to miss on the way down? But you don't know where it is. There's an interesting
that's right.
Oh, scary.
I mean, the entire topic of re-entry is something I think what is just about to begin or to talk about. However, let's start with a few questions.
Yes.
So thanks to Mike Maloney. So what data would be shared? Raw observation or processed data? Who performs quality control? I think that goes back to whose truths we believe in.
Well, that's why I think it has to be both. It has to be that there has to be the raw data so that people can maybe have to do their own quality control on it and figure out what that raw data really means. I don't think it's simple. I think we need ephemeris. We can get that. Obviously we know our geo people have been doing this for a long time, and we know a lot about the geo art. So that's relatively in control by comparison to most other parts of space, and MEO as well. It's only the low Earth area that's the problem, but I think it's got to be all of it. It's got to be out there. It's got to be made available to both academics and the commercial side of this business.
Another one also from Mike, and that's interesting. In my opinion. So what is the carrying capacity of any given orbital attitude, and how much is or should be allocated to debris?
Ooh.
42.
Yes, I think so. But because the answer was 56 in the end, as we well know. For those that didn't know, that's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is the book you should read before tackling debris. My answer is I don't know. I'm not an expert in this carry, but I do understand that each orbit can carry a certain capacity of spacecraft, but there's a limit to that. I don't know who sets the rules. Are there rules about that? Has anybody got a rule about that capacity? Or is that something we're finding out, that there is a capacity limit? In other words, if there is a capacity limit, then that needs to go into the rule book, because obviously that is what's driving the problem. If we don't know what we're doing and keep making overcapacity, then this problem just gets worse, and it's exponential, not linear. So I think it's a problem. I don't know the actual answer, but I tell you what, if there is a capacity, we need to know what it is.
I mean, you referred also to the norms of behaviors, or in space. What should I do with my satellite? What shouldn't I do? And I mean, a few weeks back, we had a great Space Café Moriba's Vox Populi, where Moriba talked with his guests exactly about that. And sure, none of us can come up with the final answer, and if so, nobody would listen to us. However, so what we can do is we bring this thought process into vibration. Let's move on with another one here from Christian Unfried. His first question he sent out was the desperate search for the reference truth. Isn't it the same with weather data and forecast? And I would, from my point of view, I would argue against that. I would say, I mean, weather is very easy. We just go out of the door and experience by ourselves and can measure and can do whatever we want to do with it. I see there's a difference in space. What are your thoughts on that?
I don't think it's. I think it's. The people that are doing this already should just be working more together to combine that effort. I think the truth is up there. We know data leads to the truth about whether something will collide into something else. But I think it's always going to be an uncertainty, and all we've got to do is get better at sharing, better at monitoring, better rules about how to calculate, so that we stabilise the results. If we know what the results are and can believe them, be more or less uncertain, then of course the warnings can be reduced, and therefore the pressure starts to reduce. So if we do our homework, that overall pressure could reduce about when a collision or isn't going to be a collision. In other words, most things don't collide. And so there we have it. It's as simple as that.
That's interesting. Talking about collision warning with the uncertainty you described earlier on in the discussion. So what is the value of this collision warning if I don't know exactly where these objects are heading? Not where they're coming from, also where they're coming from, but where they're heading. Christian also came up with an interesting other question here about the cooperation between the operators. How can we best benefit from the long-term experience of satellite operators, i.g. in the telecommunication and media broadcasting area? So I mean,
well, our colleagues in GEO, which is where life started from a space. In terms, I know Telstar was a low Earth orbit effectively, but in the real commercial world, as we understand it, is GEO. The GEO arc is where the sort of the rules, the initial rules were made, and where we all love and sort of more used to it. Well, of course, it's a fairly fixed and known environment, isn't it? We're at that balance point. We're at that, get everything at the right speed, everything traveling in the right position, everything stays where it is. And we know that certain birds have been lost and then found and been flown back around past all the other objects up there, all the other satellites. So they're in really good control of that. But it's only, when you think, it was only 2009 when they finally formed the Space Data Association, for instance, that started to help operators share their own data, their own ephemeris. And that's 2009. That's not that long ago. But we know now that the SDA itself is much more concerned about collision. It's a very real subject, and they've concentrated even more on trying to get the right results. But of course, that all depends where these other objects are, the debris, the old things. Do we know all that? So it's tricky. I mean, I think we can predict the weather better than we can debris in space at the moment. It is my guess. I think we do know what the weather is likely to be in the next 24 hours, but in debris in space, it can be quite rapid. I think going back to my thinking is, if we got better at the monitoring and the calculations and the data, if we could mix that up and got better at it, then the warnings would be real and people wouldn't be wasting the worry time on the warnings that we get. In other words, we have more warnings than actually happens by a long way. No. Yes, we should get warnings, but we need to get the numbers down to a manageable number so that people can deal with it and believe it. I think there's the problem, isn't it? Can they actually believe it? Because they'll just say, well, nothing's happened yet.
And I mean, you mentioned the amount of warnings right now, and now multiply that by a given number of potential new satellites that come into the game. And I'm quite sure it's not a linear function anymore then. So I mean,
Yeah.
just as of the knowledge of mass I have. I would like to take a last question from our Catherine here. And that was regarding it's a topic of the ITU should doing something on that. And I mean, can this problem be tackled through a voluntary responsible corporate behavior, or is there a need for a new global regulatory framework? And another sentence is the difference between irresponsible behaviors on Earth and space is that a single irresponsible act in space can make space unusable for all the others, and there are a few analogs to Earth.
Well,
I think that gave you also some more time to think about the question.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a big question, big questions in there, isn't it? It's a big thought. Yes, I do think the ITU is the place where we start to bring all this together, but they can't be as slow as they are. They have to be faster at sorting this out. This can't be left much longer. They need to do something. And even if there are rules and regulations that have to be brought in to start, shall we say, calming, not stopping technology, but just being a bit calmer and making sure that, for instance, these low Earth orbit satellites often only have a life expectancy, say, 3 to, say, 10 years. Therefore, as soon as they're out, they should be brought back down immediately. In other words, if it's dead, it's dead. Now bring it back.
Yeah.
You know, otherwise, all we're going to do is keep filling up that piece of space. So there's voluntary, yes, that's how things usually start. But I think it has to be a bit tougher than that. But it's like our oceans. It's for all of us. Space is for all of us. Our planet is what it is for all of us. If one messes up one end of the planet, we all get affected. If, as the person said in the question, if we mess up in space, it's a good chance we mess it up for everybody in space. It's going to be more dramatic there than on the ground, probably. Ground is a bit more insidious in that it's slower and it creeps up on us. In space, it's going to be some drama unfolding in space. What we've got to do is avoid the drama. So, yes, I think it has to be more regulation, sadly.
We will stay on top of this topic. I just can say, but I'm afraid that we have to come to an end, even so I would like to enjoy this or to continue this inspiring talk with you. But be sure that we will following up the space debris, space security, space safety topics in future Space Café web talks and in our magazine. It's now time also to say thank you to all of you. This year was a roller coaster for us as for many others. But we are grateful, I'm very grateful for your support and your feedback. To say this in numbers, we had our online events, we had 38 of the web talks that you experience here today, plus the Moriba Vox Populi Black Ops Summit. In total, over 7,000 registration, and that's overwhelming for us. And just compared with the last year, so 2019, we welcomed about 170,000 users on our website. Now, this year, over 450,000, so almost 500,000 visitors on our website. And that's a great, and that's, I can't repeat it any other than saying we were very grateful to all your support, and thank you to all of you space watchers out there. For the next year, we also have big plans, but of course only if you like these. And here's a quick overview for the first weeks of January, just on the first 2 weeks of January. On the 5th of January, I will talk with Doug Lavero on the current US space policy developments, and then a week later, on the 12th, I will talk with Soher Salam. She is the president of the Hague Institute of Global Justice, on the recent developments. On the 13th, a day later, we will kick off our Space Café Australia, a local one, with Melanie Ward in Adelaide. And on the 14th, we will have the second edition of our Space Café Black Ops by Ralph Thiele. And that will be about quantum technology, another thing that we might not be able to control. Just my humble opinion on that. But however, what can go wrong with all these things? More will happen later or beginning of next year. All events are going to be online on Eventbrite shortly, and as always, we would like to hear your feedback, so please check in with us on Twitter, on Facebook, on LinkedIn. Don't forget to sign up for our daily or bi-weekly newsletters, and if you like to treat yourself with something special, become a Space Watcher today. Thank you for your support. Everything will help. So take your credit card and visit our fan shop at shop.SpaceWatch.Global, and thank you, Cheryl, for your order, and we try to get it out to you before Christmas, knowing that it's tough. But however, treat yourself with something special. Thank you all for your interest today. Thank you, Martin, for your exciting talk, for your reality check in this talk. I think that's it. Exciting. Yes, it was exciting. But I mean, I think that's the mirror we need. And of course, being my guest here. And thanks to the entire team behind the scenes for doing their great job week by week again. I hope you all would stay safe and stay healthy. Thanks for joining us. I hope to see you next year. In the meantime, visit our website, follow us on social media, and don't forget, become a Space Watcher. Merry Christmas to all of you, and a happy and a better New Year. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.